G'day, it's Michael here from Fishy McFishface, and today I want to tell you about what gear you need to get into snorkeling. And it doesn't require much, but as you get into snorkeling more and more, you might want to start adding some more particular pieces of gear that can help you have a good time in the water. So let's get started. What do you need to have a good time snorkeling? Well, first of all, you'll need, here I have it, a mask and a snorkel. So you can buy these together. That's what I've done. This is a set, and I think this is US Divers brand. The important thing is you just want to make sure that this fits well on your face and that it's comfortable. So it needs to be tight enough so that water doesn't get in. Everyone's got different shaped face, and your face may not fit the same mask that fits my face. So make sure you go to a store, try them out. My local store is a place called Adreno. They do spearfishing, snorkeling, scuba diving. Try a few masks on and they'll help you find the right fit. So make sure you get one that fits well and that's not pressing up against you. I mean, this one's nice. It's got a bridge that the glass front goes the whole way across, so you don't get anything pressing on your nose because it's a fair way in front of you. So yeah, this one's been good for me, and probably go for tempered glass on the front. I think most of them are, but you probably can get plastic ones. Tempered glass just means it's a bit better in the water so it doesn't fog up as much. So yeah, you might have to experiment a bit with different masks, and snorkels are pretty standard. This is just one snorkel here. You can get other types of masks. This is one I had previously, which has been good. The mask is probably a little bit smaller for my face, so it gets a little bit sore on my nose, so that's why I don't use it as much anymore. But this one's actually got a special snorkel with a little mechanical device. And what this device does is when you go under and you hold your breath to dive, normally what will happen is your snorkel will fill up with water as you go down. But this one actually automatically, using a bit of buoyancy, seals it shut. It doesn't work all the time, so don't trust it completely if you get one of these types. So sometimes you come up for a breath and you'll breathe through, and you might suck in some water and start choking. So don't do that. Best just to poke your mask out, even if you do have a special mechanism, and take a breath of water without the snorkel in your way. So there's a few types. Another type of mask that I've used before and I didn't like, but I know some people like, is a full face mask. And it's like this big, I'll put a little picture here. And it sort of makes you look like a Teletubby, which is a show we have in Australia. I think they make you look kind of funny, but some people really like them. They're great for beginners because you don't have to worry about, breathing through your mouth and not your nose, and it's all there. But yeah, I'm not a big fan of them. You're not really supposed to dive down deep with them, apparently, but they do have a mechanism for it. And from what I've heard, and I actually did a bit of research in my engineering days for a company that did breathing masks for sleep apnea devices. One of the big problems they have is you need to have, if you're breathing through something like a mask, you want to make sure that you can breathe out the volume of carbon dioxide completely and then breathe in enough oxygen to replenish. Now, if you've got too long or too much volume in your mask and snorkel, and when you breathe, you can't push all your air out the top. You just end up sucking in the same air you breathed out. And I've heard that there's been some studies on some of the full face masks that is a little bit of a danger of CO2 rebreathing, which isn't good for you. So I think they're checked out by now. It used to be a problem, but I just prefer the normal mask and snorkel. So that's the first thing you need, and really that's all you need to get started. You don't really need flippers, but I think they're useful. So let's go to flippers. These are the flippers I use. They came with one of my snorkel sets, and I found these ones really nice. Flippers are handy because when you're snorkeling, you want to move gracefully through the water, and it's very hard to, you don't want to be swimming with your arms moving. You just keep your arms by your side and gently kick. And if you've got flippers, that makes it a lot easier. If you don't have flippers, you'll barely move in the water. If there's a little bit of current, you won't be able to kick against it. So flippers are a great idea. I've got these ones which are fairly hard plastic up the top, and sort of a molded foot, which is nice. And my favorite part about these flippers is you have adjustable back to them. So if I got mates who if I got a fair bit of snorkeling gear, I'll let them borrow it, but I'll make sure I'll probably give them these ones first to try because it's adjustable. If they've got a bigger foot or a smaller foot from me, these will still fit them. So I think they're great and they're easy to take on and off. So I use these, but there's some other flippers you can try. You can just use normal kicking flippers. You got to make sure you have the right size for them to work, but they're pretty good just for swimming laps in the pool, but they'll work in the ocean too. I've done a bit of boogie boarding in the past and I've tried these. They're fine. They're a bit more rigid than snorkeling flippers and they're a bit shorter. So if you really want to move fast quickly, they're great for that, like for boogie boarding, but you're actually not as efficient in the water with these. So best to have the long ones, and you can go all out and buy the really expensive ones, which I'll show the picture of, which are like the spearfishing, free diving flippers. They've got these big blades that you can actually replace and get different flexibility, and very expensive. So if you're really into that, go all out and get some of them. But I think just standard flippers, ones with the strap around the back, I think they're the best ones to go with. All right, now in terms of the essentials, the other one I think, which is very important in most places where you'll snorkel, where it's fairly warm, is sunscreen. There's plenty of brands out there, just get some sunscreen. The 50 plus stuff is good, or 30 plus. And make sure when you put your sunscreen on, you put it on your face, but also especially the back of your neck, top of your head if you don't have hair there, your ears, arms, legs, anything that's exposed, but especially the back of your legs, like your calves, the back top of your heels, because those parts you don't often think about putting sunscreen on, but when you're snorkeling, you're facing down, so the sun's going to get you there. So make sure you cover up with sunscreen. All right, those are the essentials. Now I'm going to go through some things which are useful, but you don't necessarily need to go snorkeling. So first on the list, you probably have a towel with you anyway, but I'd recommend getting a poncho towel. These towels that I've got here, they've actually got a little hoodie, and they've just got holes for your arms, and they cover you up. And the advantage of that is you don't need to have change rooms near your car park or where you go snorkeling. You can just bring your poncho towel with you, put it over the top, and then just get changed underneath it, and without exposing anything. So I find that really handy. Good to have a poncho towel. The other thing, if you're driving to a place and you want to put your car keys somewhere, I'd get a key box. So I'm not going to show you my passcode, but these are great. You flip a little switch, you hook this onto somewhere on your car, sometimes you have like a little metal part of the chassis with a hole. You just slide that through the hole, lock it, and then shut that, and then you'll actually open this flap up, but I'm not going to show you the passcode. Do your 4-digit passcode, and then you can open it. So put your keys in here after you lock your car, and then you can just enjoy being in the water. You can get waterproof pouches. I've tried these under my wetsuit before, and to be honest, most of the time they've leaked anyway. So you can get little phone-sized pouches for your keys, but really I wouldn't do that. I often find they leak, so I'd just get a key box. If your key isn't electronic and it's just a metal key like an old car, usually wetsuits have like a little elastic band thing that you can slot it into and put it on the inside. That's another option. So that's important. Okay, moving on to wetsuits. I normally use a spring suit. This is just a real cheap one. I've only got cheap wetsuits, but they do the job for me. Spring suit means you got short sleeves, you got short legs as well. So great for in summer when it's a little bit cool, or winter. I use this in Sydney during summer, because in Sydney it's always a bit cool in the water. Anything around 20 degrees or less, I tend to put my spring suit on. And even if it is warm water, I'll usually wear my spring suit anyway, just because it gives you a little bit of padding. So if you're snorkeling near rocks or a shipwreck, and a bit of surge just pushes you into a bit of shipwreck metal or an oyster, this at least will stop you from getting cut. So, if you've got one that's not too warm, I'd just wear it anyway. It just saves you from getting cut. So, wetsuit, you'll also probably want, if you're going to cooler water, a steamer. So this is a steamer, a wetsuit, thicker rubber on it, and long sleeves, long legs. And you don't need to get one with camouflage color. This was on special at BCF for like $40 at the end of winter, which is a great time to buy a wetsuit because they're trying to get rid of them. So I just use this. This is this little patch here. You don't need that, but that's if you do spearfishing. I've never done it, but it's where you load your gun against that, and you'll often have a zip up the back. So there's plenty of different wetsuits. Just make sure when you're getting a wetsuit that they're fairly tight. You don't want to get one that's a bit loose anywhere. All the seams around your neck and your arms, your legs should be quite tight. You don't want to cut your circulation off, but they really should be kind of difficult to get in and out of. Possible, but difficult. And that's a good sign that you've got the right size wetsuit, because over time they will stretch when you use them in the water and wash them, and not in the washing machine, but just in the sink. Yeah, get one that's reasonably tight, and you'll find that's actually most effective in the water. It'll let a little bit of water in, but it'll keep that water against your body. That little layer of water will heat up, and that's how the wetsuit keeps you warm. Cool, so wetsuits, they're important. If you go into colder water, even colder water, what you might want to do is get some booties. Now, I got some of these. I've only used them once in Sydney, and to be honest, I didn't find them that useful because it wasn't that cold. But if things are really cold, like I went surfing at a wave pool in Melbourne before, and it was in the middle of winter, non-heated pool, and it must have been like 12, 13 degrees Celsius. I wish I had a pair of booties. So if you're snorkeling in really cold water, you probably want to get a pair of booties, and make sure you try these with your flippers so you can make sure your flippers still fit, because they are pretty thick. So yeah, booties are handy if it's really cold. You might also want to get gloves. These ones aren't neoprene gloves, they're just like wetsuit gloves. These are just normal gloves, but you can get gloves that actually give you warmth, like the wetsuit rubber. So you can get them for colder conditions, and even a hood for your head. So really get kitted out if you go into cold water. It gets more expensive. But the other reason to get gloves, and I almost always use gloves when I go snorkeling now, is these are just like 15 bucks, I think, from Adreno. And you can get them from any sort of snorkeling, scuba diving, fishing store. They've just got a protective grippy stuff on the base, so on your palm and your fingers, and they're just breathable. They're tiny little thin material. But when you've got these on and you're snorkeling, if there's a strong current and you want to snorkel over one spot and there's a few rocks maybe near a rock wall or a shipwreck, you don't have to worry about not touching it. Like, you can actually just hold on, be gentle, don't break the habitat that you're looking at, but you can just hold on to the edge of a rock or to a pole or to a bit of a shipwreck, and that way you don't have to just constantly kick against the current. You can just hold on and look at all the things underneath you. So I really think the gloves are super useful. I always wear them just so I can go out and hold on to things, or if I'm diving down underneath a rock, you've got to be careful doing that. I might just want to put my hand up just to guide myself as I go under. So yeah, they're really handy. I'd definitely get yourself some cheap gloves with a bit of protective on the side. Okay, so wetsuit, gloves, booties. The other thing that I think is useful is a weight belt as you get more experienced. The weight belt is good because it means you can dive down deeper without having to kick so hard, or even dive shallow. When you hold your breath, you don't have to kick so hard to keep yourself down, because your body's always trying to float itself up. When you've got your lungs full of air, and depending on your body fat percentage, more body fat will actually float you a bit more. So I wear a diving belt. I'll probably only have one weight when I've got my spring suit on, or no suit. And I have two weights when I've got my steamer wetsuit on, because you get more buoyancy with the wetsuit. And these are just standard weights. You can get lead weights as well, which I'll show in a picture. But I get these coated weights. They're a little bit more expensive, but it's just a little less worry about lead poisoning and all that, which from what I've heard is not really an issue with lead weights. Don't lick them or anything, but I just, peace of mind having coated ones. You don't have to worry about lead, especially if you've got kids around the house who can access them. You don't want them picking them up and touching them and licking them or something like that. So weight belt is useful around your waist, and also you can get different types. I've got this quick release one, which I think is nice, because if you do get in a situation where you're out of air and you're not really floating, because you don't want to sink, you want to be neutrally buoyant, or a little bit more buoyant, so you're still floating. But so when you dive down, you can stay down without putting too much effort in kicking to stay down. But if you go down deeper, you may not float. As you go deeper, you start to sink a bit more. Quick release is good, because if you get stuck, you don't need to get up quick. Quick release, take your belt off, and up you go. So I think this is good. You can also get belt buckle ones as well. Okay, so that's the weight belt. And with my filming, underwater filming, I found the weight belt one of the best additions, because it means you can be much smoother in the water when you're neutrally buoyant when you dive down, and you can film things much smoother. So that's why I'd recommend getting that. All right, the other thing that I think is useful is a diving knife. So I've just got, it's actually a shucking knife, doesn't have a sharp point on it. I just got that because I'm not very experienced with knives, so I thought I don't really want to poke myself or anything. Still got sharp edges, but the main reason I got that is it's actually a bit of a safety thing. It's not because I want to kill anything in the water or fend myself off from any creatures. It's because if you're diving in a spot where there's lots of seaweed that you could get tangled up in, or if your wetsuit gets caught on a bit of shipwreck, or if you'll get fishing line. When people get a snag and they're fishing, they'll cut it off because they can't get it out, and you get a taut piece of fishing line between two rocks or oysters. If you get caught up in something like that and you've dived down, you could drown. So it's really, really important, especially if you're going to places where there's fishing line, any tangle hazards. Dive with a knife, and you can get these little holster things, and this one you attach to the edge of your leg, and you just click the button, pull it out, you can cut yourself loose. And of course, if you've got a fish that's, sometimes people will leave their fishing lines in, or a fish might have recently gone onto a snag and they're just stuck there and they're going to die, you can cut that fishing line loose and let them free, which is a nice thing to do. So good to have a knife with you. I'm not a huge fan of this button system. It's a bit clunky and it's kind of hard to dry when you come home. So I'll point to a picture here. There's a different type of knife, just with a fabric-y case. I think if I was going to get another knife, I'd get something like that. This was just a cheapie from BCF. It was like $30, so I'd probably get a better knife in future. But yeah, that's an important safety thing actually, to have a knife with you, just in case you get tangled while you're holding your breath. So the last thing, if you're diving in areas where there's boats that come by, then it's important that you have a tether and a flotation device with a flag on it, or at least have a snorkel mask where it's got bright color up the top. So I got this one with a bright yellow color, and at least if I'm snorkeling and they can't see me, they can see, they might see a little yellow bright color. That's a help. But ideally you have a long tether with a flotation device. I'll put a little picture here of an example from my local store. These are good safety things. So I've been out in deeper water before where I didn't have one, but the person who I'd seen there had one, and I just snorkeled around them, and they had a little flotation device with a blue and white flag, and that alerts any boat users that there's a diver nearby, so they take a wide berth when they go around them, and it's just a good safety thing. So I don't have one, but in future I think I'll look towards getting one, especially when I do dives in deeper water where there's boat traffic. So that's a good safety feature as well. Okay, so the only thing really to talk about now is just filming. And if you want to get into filming when you're snorkeling, which I think is a lot of fun, because it just adds a whole other dimension to the experience of learning how to approach fish in the right way so they don't spook, and how to get the right angles for the best footage, the best lighting. I'd get a GoPro, or there's actually a lot of other brands that I think DJI or some other brands have got some really good competition to the GoPro. I use a GoPro Hero 9, but I'd say when you're looking for a camera, see if you can get something that can film up to 4K, and see if you can get something that does at least 120 frames per second. So with most of my footage that I publish, I actually film at 120 frames per second, and that means I can do slow motion up to 4 times slow. So normally when you watch things, it's 30 frames per second or 25. And if you've got 120, then you can do up to 4 times slow motion on that without it looking patchy. And slow motion makes underwater footage look so much better. And it means you don't have to worry about, whether you're shaky with your hand or not. So I'd get a camera like that if you can, but yeah, anything that's above full HD or 1280, 720, that's all pretty good for filming. Of course, get a waterproof camera. And the other thing you want to do is get a GoPro stick. These make a big difference in the water. The one I've got, it's actually not GoPro brand, but it's actually hollow. So I can adjust it, make it longer, and I can actually adjust how much water I let into this hollow chamber. So it's mutually buoyant or a little bit buoyant. And I always like to keep it a little bit buoyant because if I ever drop it, I don't want it to sink down further than I can dive. I want it to float back up to the surface so I can grab it. So see if you can get some sort of flotation device with at least some buoyancy, but not too much that you need extra weight belts. So that's handy. Now with some GoPros and some action cameras, they are waterproof. So the one I've got is waterproof, but I still have the housing for it. It just means it protects your camera for a bit longer because it's an expensive thing, the camera. And this was a good reason because on one of my dives, I'm not sure, but I think it was an octopus. I was filming an octopus and I got up real close and I thought, oh, it'd be cool if its sucker comes up against my camera. And I'm pretty sure, if you look carefully, there's a crack through here that lets water in now. I'm pretty sure an octopus sucker did that to the glass or plastic. So you never know or you might whack it against a rock and something might damage it. So if I didn't have the case, that would have happened to my actual GoPro and that would have been very expensive. But instead I've just got a new case to replace it and ready to go. So yeah, that's what I would recommend as things you can add to your snorkeling gear collection to enjoy your time in the water. I hope that's useful. If I've missed anything, put it in the comments. Let me know what your thoughts are on different types of gear and equipment. And yeah, I hope to see you in the water. I'll see you next time.